Hi, I'm Jay Murray. I write for the Michigan Enjoyer.
And I'm Scott Barr. Spent 8 years on City Council, still write a bi-weekly newsletter.
Scott's stuff is brilliant.
And I think Jay's stuff's hilarious.
Scott's diplomatic. He could probably lighten up.
And he swears. A lot.
We're both lifelong Livonians, Stevenson grads. We're Stevenson dads.
And he's convinced me that Eddie Seacott belongs in the Baseball Hall of Fame.
See? Common ground. So the Michigan Enjoyer asked us to do this live, February 12th at 7 p.m. Bennett Civic Center Library Auditorium. That is if the fucking hot water heater holds up.
There he goes again.
Remember what you asked me?
Yeah, who's actually gonna wanna come to this thing?
Let's find out. My name's Jay Murray. I'm a writer with the Michigan Enjoyer. I'm a Livonia resident. I'm that noise is annoying, isn't it? It really is. It really is becoming bothersome.
You know, it's almost like we should consider a new library, Jay.
I know.
There, that got him going.
That got the heart rates up. Can you guys hear me? How about, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
My name's Jay Murray. I'm a writer with the Michigan Enjoyer. I'm a Livonia resident. And just a brief summary of my introduction to the world of journalism. I'm not a journalist by trade. I came to this late. And I sort of just fell into it by accident. It's by accident that I'm here right now. For several years, I was writing under a pen name, a pseudonym. And then I got connected to some journalists, and they kept me in the game and told me to keep writing. Some very big name journalists, nationally known journalists, kind of began to mentor me. And I got connected to the Michigan Enjoyer. And I noticed there's a void here in Livonia. There's no journalists in Livonia. There's nobody really covering Livonia. And so I'm attempting to fill that void. But I would like to I had a monologue written for this, but I ended up throwing it out because today is, Today is Abraham Lincoln's birthday. And I was reading probably one of our greatest presidents of all time. I'm a big Lincoln fan. And I was reading in Team of Rivals about the notion of radicalism, which is kind of inflicting Livonia a little bit. We have some radicalism on each side of the political divide, and it has some negative polarity. It's pushing people to the middle because normal people, average voters, don't like radicalism of any type. They're negatively repulsed by it. And that ossifies the middle, it creates apathy. And Abraham Lincoln was a great president because he understood the radicalism of his era. There was a politician named Thaddeus Stevens who was a radical abolitionist, a radical Republican. And Lincoln needed him to get the 13th Amendment passed. And Thaddeus Stevens, history has shown that he was on the right side of history, but he was very radical. He was so radical, in fact, that he was a bulwark to his own movement. And Abraham Lincoln, according to all the historical documents, they had a secret basement meeting in the basement of the White House. And Abraham Lincoln persuaded Thaddeus Stevens to chill out, for lack of a better term, just to relax, to knock off the radicalism that was burning in his heart, and the anger. Thaddeus Stevens, if you guys know the story, if you guys are students of history, you know that Thaddeus Stevens was a very angry man. He was highly radicalized. He was full of grievance, and he was emotionally vested. And Lincoln spoke to his heart, told him to knock it off. I need you with me. And to do that, you got to chill out. And you got to be pragmatic, and you have to understand the longer game. And that worked. And so I think that's a good lesson for today. We have radicalism ripping this city apart on each side. And it's filled with grievance and anger and fear, which admittedly are huge motivators for voters today. Most voters, when they go out, they're angry about something. I'm voting to stop this, or I'm voting because I'm afraid of that. But I think the bulk of Livonia residents, most of the people, I'm looking around the room and I see a lot of people I know and friends of mine, and I think the bulk of us are average voters who are not radicalized in our heart. We just have we have a pragmatic vision, and we have to have conversations like what we're going to have here, what I'm going to have with Scott here, to kind of normalize and create the environment for more civil discourse. And before I turn it over to Scott, the title of the event tonight is The Battle of the Soul of Livonia. And Scott has some deep thoughts on that. I'll defer to him. But the notion that we have soul in our city, or there is a soul to battle for, is something that we've been thinking about and contemplating. And I guess at this point, I'll turn it over to Scott and let you cook, because you had some interesting thoughts on the notion of our soul as Livonia residents.
So first of all, just a quick introduction for people that don't know me. My name's Scott Barr. Other than 4 years away at college, my first year of marriage in an apartment in Farmington Hills, I've lived my whole life in Livonia. I say that 1 year in Farmington Hills because my wife, who's here, would tell you that when we were looking for a house, I said I want to go back to Livonia. So lifelong Livonian, been involved in the city in a number of ways, but most prominently on city council for 8 years, term limited off a couple years ago. And when I was on city council, I started writing this newsletter just to keep constituents informed. And it grew over time. And when it got to be a pretty large list, and by the time I came off council, I was getting all these emails from people saying, "You're not going to stop doing this, are you?" And I thought, well, I better not. And so I do keep doing it, and it's continued to grow, which I'm thankful for. And it's actually not just for you. It's actually good for me. I would not, if I didn't have the discipline of writing that, I wouldn't be paying as much attention to what's going on. So I thank all you for reading it, those of you that do, because it's done well for me too. But yeah, so Battle for the Soul of Livonia. When they first pitched this event to me, if those of you that saw that video, it's the honest truth. I said, I'll do it, but I said, who's going to come to this thing? And apparently people wanted to come to this thing, so the enjoyer was right, I was wrong. But the other thing I said is, guys, Battle for the Soul of Livonia, really? And I remember Jay's like, well, what's wrong with it? I said, it's kind of dramatic, don't you think? I mean, Battle for the Soul of Livonia? Battle, soul? And Jay says, what do you want to call it? And so I thought for a little bit. And just warning, you guys that saw the video, you saw him making fun of me for being diplomatic. So you can go, I'll laugh in a second. I thought about it a little bit, and I said, what about challenges, choices, and change? A conversation about Livonia. He's like, Scott, nobody's going to show up to that. So Battle for the Soul of Livonia we did, and apparently it worked. What's interesting is that word soul. When I first heard it, I thought like Battle for the Heart of Livonia, which regardless of where your opinions are, that probably feels about right with what we've seen in recent years. It was actually my son that said to me, he said, Dad, he goes, Soul Livonia, like, especially just people know you're a man of faith and you're not really shy about it. Are people going to think you're just trying to proselytize? I was like, well, I didn't even think about that. No, that's not what it's about. So there's that word of soul. But then they did a podcast yesterday, Charlie LaDuff, which by the way, I never thought I'd meet Charlie LaDuff. I've admired his writing for years. He's up here in the corner. Yeah. So that was kind of a fun privilege for me tonight. But on his podcast yesterday, and they're interviewing Karen Dumas, is that how you say her last name? And she kind of, I think she was making fun of us, Jay. She's like,
so.
Soul? Like Livonia's got soul? And kind of in a mocking way. So people have different words for that, views of that word soul. Today before I left work, I was thinking about it some more. I thought, where does Livonia have soul? Like, I feel a deep sense of connection to this town, but is it soul? So I did something that I'm learning to do. I'm being pushed to do this by my boss at work. I went to AI. I did. And I went to AI and I asked AI, I said, what does it mean when a city has soul? And I got a pretty extensive answer. And the answer kind of made sense. And so then I typed in, I said, does Livonia, Michigan have soul? What do you think it said? It actually said something to the effect of, Livonia has some soul, but it's kind of in an inward focus kind of way. That's what it said. But then it went on to say the deep sense of connection to a hometown, the deep tradition of community groups, the ties that people feel to one another, the allegiance people feel to where they grew up, those kind of things. I was like, okay, that all fits. But then I went into some of those places like sense of place, and if it disappeared, would people miss it? And is it a place that people say is like no place else? I mean, those it'd probably be debatable. Other than those of us that are really attached to this place, that's soul. But when I think of Soul Livonia, as somebody that grew up here, I do feel a deep connection to this place. And I'm very quick to tell people, look, I know to people from the outside, they probably look at me funny. Like, you don't drive into the city and think, oh my goodness, this is a place I have to go. But if you've grown up here and lived here, I've got some high school classmates here tonight, some who I'm not sure I've seen since high school, okay? There's at least 2 here that I'm not sure I've seen since high school. That sense of connection is real. And there were other guys from high school that were texting me saying, Scott, we heard you're doing this thing, we're coming back. And then some things worked out that they couldn't come back. But But there are traditions here. There are connections here. And so that's what I think we mean a little bit when we talk about the soul of Livonia. And frankly, I think AI was right. It is, but it's kind of in an inward-focused kind of way. So then it comes to that battle piece, which I thought was too dramatic. And I know I'm talking long here. Let me just see if I can do this quickly.
Keep going.
I think it's very easy. You look at the different controversies that have happened here over the last, I don't know, maybe I'm simple. I'm looking at Kathleen. She was on council with me for a long time. Kathleen, I mean, I think of it as like the last 5 to 6 years. Maybe it's longer than that, but I feel like it's really intensified during that time. And there's a few milestone moments in there that I would tie it to. But I think it's way too easy to jump to Republican, Democrat, or conservative, liberal. I think we tend to want to do that, but I think that's way too easy. I think it's deeper than that. And there was a time, and I'm not going to get into the specifics of what the conversation was, but there was a meeting, I think in 2020, maybe 2021, pretty tumultuous time to be a council member, and there was somebody that was pretty angry at the podium. Actually, there was multiple people that were coming to each one of our meetings, and I kept hearing this word that just didn't strike me the right way. I kept hearing things like power. You guys have power, and you need to use it. Not all of us have power. You guys have power. Use your power for good. And I have to tell you, as a council member sitting up there, I was like, it just didn't feel right to me. I said, I don't think of this role as power. Like, that's not even the lens through which I see this role. And yet, the people that were coming up that podium, it was all about power. And I thought, I think there's something there. I think I even wrote about it at the time. I think I'm going to step outside of party lines, and I'm going to divide the way we look at politics, state, federal, or local, down some different lines. I think there's this power dynamic that you see government as a way to seize power to bring about ends that you want. That's one way to look at government. There's another way to look at government that says, I want to keep government as limited as possible to give people the freedom to thrive. Okay? And I think that's not wordsmithed. I'm sure marketers could do better with that, but I think there's something about that view of what the purpose of government is. I need to seize power so I can do what I want versus I need to serve in order to keep government in its place so people can do what they want. I think that's more of a divide than conservative, liberal, Republican, Democrat. And part of the reason I say that is, and I think we've seen this in the last couple of years, you actually see people from both sides of the Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal on each sides of that continuum. We've seen that in our city. It's been really remarkable to watch. Some of the ways you see that play out, here's another one, and folks, this might rub some of you the wrong way, but we said this was going to be unfiltered. I think in Livonia right now, we talk about soul, that connection to hometown. I think in Livonia right now, there's a battle between nostalgia and what I'm going to call pragmatic change. I'm a very nostalgic guy. My family will tell you that. I've got boxes in the basement of little trinkets that are important to me that I don't ever want to get rid of. I've still got a crate in the basement of my entire baseball card collection that's not worth anything because I collected in the late 80s when they were overproducing them, okay? But I'll never get rid of it because it's worth more to me than it's going to be to anybody else. I'm a nostalgic guy. I always have a hard time leaving a house when we've moved. That's the way I am. So I get the nostalgia piece. But I still look at some of the battles we're dealing with within our city and I say, but we've got to recognize that it's 2026 and we've got to think about some things differently. So I get the people that are saying, don't change. I get it. Livonia's always been this. We don't want to change it. But I think we are in danger of clinging to that point that we are going to become irrelevant. And again, it becomes that, and that's one of those places where it becomes that power versus, I need to come up with a better word from it, but that limited government approach. I think you have people that even would style themselves and are conservatives or Republicans, for example, that you wouldn't think would be in that dynamic. And yet when that topic comes up, they're jumping right over there saying, we got to get power so we can do what we want. There's a lot of different directions that we could go with that, Jay. But that's, when I think of battle for the soul of Livonia, that's my best attempt. And then you get the whole populism versus establishment thing that definitely plays out. And I guess I used to be the new up and comer, and then I served in council for 8 years, and now I'm establishment, I guess. I don't know. But
what you guys are watching right now,
it sounds like our phone calls.
Scott and I, for the better part of a year, maybe longer. Well, just very quickly, I mentioned I used to write under a pseudonym. Scott was one of the very few people in this city that knew who I was when I was writing under a pen name.
And it was kind of more fun that way.
Yeah, it's not fun. You're kind of, hiding under the radar and no one knows it's you, and I'm trying to, anyway, enough of that. The point being is, Scott and I had I would say somewhat regular, frequent conversations over the past year. And these conversations got very deep, and through those conversations we determined that both, I think it's clearly obvious, Scott and I love Livonia. Our connections here run deep. The evidence of you guys in this room and our connections with many of you are evidence of that. Our roots go very deep, but we started to grow, we began to talk to each other about our concerns for the city, in addition to our love, but in optimistic ways. Because it's very easy to blackpill, so to speak, and become apathetic or become concerned or become angry or fearful about current conditions or every election, this notion that elections are catastrophic. All these types of tropes that are, none of it's true, in my opinion at least. And so Scott and I would have these conversations. So what you're watching right now is the veil being pulled away on the conversations that Scott and I have had for the better part of a year. And these conversations have lasted from an hour to 2 hours long. And they've been mostly educational for me. Some of you guys know me. I got a couple buddies in the back room. They knew me about back in the day. I'm not exactly the most intellectual cat. And so I've been listening to Scott over this past year, and quite simply one of the most brilliant thinkers I know in the city, just writ large actually, but here locally. And it dawned on me, Scott is a special individual because of his...
Are you done yet?
No, I'm cooking with gas. Come on. And so these concerns about the city, the condition of the city, the health of the Livonia voters, and I don't mean the physical health. I don't mean like how we're feeling, like if we're feeling good or bad, like depending on the weather, I'm talking about the health in terms of our strength as voters and how we're reasoning with our own votes, reasoning with the current landscape of the city. If we're being intellectual with our critical thinking, I guess is a better term, right? Are we thinking critically about the current condition of Livonia? And as you mentioned, the left-right divide on some of these things, very much of that means little today because this anti-establishment mindset, and then everyone's emotionally vested and angry, and the power aspect is concerning because, and I'm going to ruffle some feathers here when I say this. I've been listening, and I see some people in this room that are Democrats or liberals, and I have much love for some of the people in this room that disagree with me on certain things or a lot of things. I've been listening to Democrats my entire life speak in those terms about power and their attempt to control or limit capitalism or economic growth. And I understand that, and I understand why that is. Some of it comes from common good notions. But when I see far right wingers, people I've known for a long time, using those same discussion points, red flags are going up. I don't want to hear conservatives using vernacular that sounds like central planning. I don't want to hear conservatives talk about seizing power or using power or some of these things. I believe that conservatism, and I know we're getting political here, this wasn't our intent, but conservatism is, in my opinion, restraint and the lack of government.
And listen, anybody that knows me knows I'm a conservative. I'm an unabashed conservative, and I even thought coming into tonight, what if somebody were to ask me, what does it mean to be a conservative? And because I think we can all stick our labels on those, and we can stick our personalities on those. That's cult of personality is another thing that concerns me about where we're heading, even as a nation. And I'm not even talking about just now, although I think that's true now too. But I think if I had to boil it down to the different, because you think of conservatives to conserve, and people say, oh, it means don't change. Well, I think that's too simple. Because a conservative, I would tell you, if we've gone down a wrong path, the most progressive thing you can do is to turn around and go back to where you came from. Just think about that a little bit. Think about what the words mean, all right? That's why you won't hear me, other than right now, you're not going to hear me refer to that side that I'm not on as progressives. I don't think it's an accurate depiction of what they are. But at the core, what it comes down to is, do you believe that there is transcendent truth or not? Because if you do, and I know that starts sounding religious, trust me, I could go that direction. I taught a Bible class for the better part of 20 years, okay? So I could do that. But that's not where I'm going here. Even politically, you go to our Declaration of Independence, and where did they get the authority to do what they did? They call to a standard higher than the king, an unchanging standard. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. For all the talk that constitutional or unconstitutional gets, prior to the Constitution, there was this thing called the Declaration, which is really the heartthrob of what created this land, okay? And so that idea that there's a transcendent truth that is unchanging, that is universally applicable, I think is what the core principle that whether they even believe it or not is what in their heart of hearts, what makes somebody a conservative. And so that's why on some things, yes, it's going to be saying not change. Not because I want to be stuck in the past. I just advocate, and we can talk about this more. I just advocated for places in the city where I think we have a problem with nostalgia and have to look at pragmatic change. I'm not saying never change. But there's going to be some times where it's that, and there's going to be some times that you say, no, we do have to change, but we change because this principle is true and we've strayed from it. Okay? That's very different from what I would define liberals or progressives, as they like to call themselves or whatever, that sees truth as something that changes with the time. We need to be on the right side of history. What's true yesterday may not be true today. And so there's this race to jump ahead of it. And what does that lead to? It leads to I have to have power because I have to be the one to influence it. That's what I think, Jay, gets down to the difference between conservative and liberal. And I think we need to look at it that way versus the cliches and the memes that get thrown at us on cable news and everything else.
Let's key on this notion of nostalgia. And I'm as nostalgic as anybody in this room, maybe even more so. And I'm in the notion of clinging on to things from your past for sentimental value. Baseball cards. I told Scott the other day, I go, you come over to my house, and my wife is, I have Star Wars Legos all over the basement of my house because I cling to the 80s in such a way that I'm a big Star Wars fan, and I like Star Wars stuff, and Star Wars is embedded in the 80s. I know about the newer movies, but I cling to the 80s. So I understand this notion of nostalgia and clinging to those things, and all of us have those sorts of items that we cling on to.
And who's not nostalgic about Justin Verlander being back with the Tigers,
I know,
right?
I know. But there's an unhealthy nostalgia. Nostalgia is, in effect, the rust of a memory. It's not the real memory, and it's not the real past. It's what you're envisioning it in your mind. Whether that's a song from a moment when you were at the Livonia spree in 1986 and you kissed a girl for the first time. Whether it's when you're with your buddies and you got in trouble for the first time and Mrs. Tadigan's son is chasing you down 5 Mile. You know, yes, that happened. That happened. Where are you at, Mrs. Tadigan? She's back there? There you go, yeah. So but the memories are figments. They're rust of a memory. It's not the real memory, and it's not how you remember it. It's just a vibe that you had. So at that point, if you allow yourself to cling to that too hard, it rudders you in time. You get stuck in time, like Kurt Vonnegut wrote about this stuff at length. The notion of being stuck in time, and you're not moving forward, and you're envisioning 2026 through the lens of 1986 or 1975 or 1965. And I'm guilty of this too. I tend to view things through the lens of 1993. That was a significant year for me. And so I look at things through the lens of the 90s oftentimes. And that can be a barricade, a stop sign to making change. So how that happens in the real world, and here we go, we're going to get into it. Let's get into it.
Just for the record, those of you that know my wife and just saw her walk out, she's not upset with something I said. She has to pick up my son from basketball practice, and she's going to watch the live stream or listen to the live stream while she's doing it. So
Livonia is on the precipice of potential aesthetic change, and whatever that could be.
Like what, Jay?
Let's see. Let's just do it. Do you want to do it?
What's coming
The
to mind?
Noble Library.
Okay, what else?
Laurel Park.
Laurel Park, yeah.
Laurel Park's
else?
a big one. Laurel Park is going to be gone sooner than later.
Should we put a gas station at the corner of 8 Mile and Newburgh?
We could put a gas station there. You know, do we need another car wash? Do we need a chicken shack? You know, so there's economic growth, and there's this fear of, well, are we going to saturate with too many of this or that, or too many car washes, or too many gas stations, and then we go crazy over these things. But, you know, we're really, and I'm tripping on my words. The arguments against these things can be, well, we don't want this, or we can't have it here because it's too saturated, or you can't put a gas station too close to this because it's not right, it won't look right. But really, and I'm convinced of this, and I could be wrong, I'm willing to listen to anyone who'll tell me I'm crazy. I think the the underlying thing is people who have been here, guys like you and us, other people in the room who have been here their whole lives, they don't want to see the Livonia, of the nostalgic Livonia in their minds. They don't want to see it aesthetically changed. What do you agree?
I think you're right. And let me just, and listen, on all these issues, probably on all the issues you just mentioned, I'm probably not on the save it side. I'll just tell you, and we can talk about that. But since we're talking about this nostalgia thing, I told you I'm a nostalgic guy. I'm going to give the people on Save That the benefit of the doubt for a second. I think it goes back to what I talked about the Soul of Livonia. I think they genuinely love the city. I really do think
everyone
that.
here does.
And I think the change scares them because they think the city's going to become something different. And so I think it's worthy of just recognizing that, okay? But I'll tell you, I told you I have a couple classmates. I'm going to look at Joel and Kurt over here. There's a side church lot over on 5 Mile Road that we played tackle football on every Friday in high school. Every time I drive by that place, I tell my kids it's where I played football when I was in high school. But you know what? You can't play football over there anymore because they built a garage on that lot. It changed, okay? We moved to a place when I was 10 years old where my parents still live in the Sheffield neighborhood near 7 and Wayne. And when I moved there, we had a big undeveloped lot. It used to be a field behind us. The house that owned the field is still out on 7 Mile Road, but there's been a big neighborhood put in behind him. But we used to play when we moved in the house, he said, oh, your kids will love it. They can go run around back there, play baseball back there. We flew kites back there. We launched stuff back there. We had a blast. They came and they built houses there. It changed, okay? These things happen. And it's one of somebody that I was very close to, I call him my hero in life, was my Grandpa Barr. And he was a farmer in Kansas, lived in a grand old farmhouse that was built in the late 1800s by a Kansas state senator, staircase at each way, just grand old place. My family loves that house. I still dream about that house sometimes. That house looks terrible today. The people that live there have not kept it up. It tears me apart. It's only a matter of time before the main barn's going to come down because it's just starting to, it's hard to see. But my grandpa, before he died, every time we drove by there, he would make a comment like, he would make a comment of, man, it's hard to see that. And then he'd say, but it's not mine anymore. It's somebody else's. And his ability to just recognize that had its place, but it's time for me to move on, is something that, frankly, I struggle with. But I think as a city, we have to be willing to wrestle with that. So you take something like...
say it, the Noble Library, say it.
Well, okay, let's go to a Noble Library, which I totally get the nostalgia. I won the Battle of the Books at Noble Library one time, okay? Way back when. Sandburg Library was my home library. I remember when we built the Civic Center Library, there was concern then about it's going to tear people away from our neighborhood libraries. This was the new soulless place. Okay? There was a time that this was new. And yet we just had a battle last summer where you had a lot of people saying, oh, you can't touch that. And listen, we can debate whether that was the right thing or not. Okay, let's just set that aside for a second. There's reasonable things to talk about with that. But just say, oh, we can't touch that because that's the way it's always been. Listen, I got connection here too. I saw one of my elementary school class, there he is, Mr. Serrano back there. He might remember this name. Katie Singer, I haven't said that name in years. But one of her pieces of artwork was a stained glass window thing in the library here. Up until a couple years ago, they took it down. And I noticed they took it down. I was like, oh, it's Katie Singer's piece of artwork from 2nd grade. I've noticed that for years. It's sad that that's gone. But it's gone. Times change, okay? And I think you take the libraries, for example. I feel the nostalgia. Sandburg's still the closest library to my house. But we have to look, it's 2026. How are people using libraries? As taxpayers, does it make sense to continue to support 3 libraries? I know there's different views on this. We could talk about this forever. I would say no. I would rather focus our taxpayer resources in one great library, because when I look at some of our surrounding communities, as much as I love our libraries, guys, they don't stack up that favorably. And that's not a knock on anybody here or anything. It's just we're spreading them too thin. I'd rather have one great library than going with 3 and now 2, what I would say are arguably mediocre ones. Let's just be real. Now, we can continue to debate that, but I'm just saying we have to be willing to look at things as they are. I probably just lost half the room. Thanks a lot, Jenny.
I think we need to discuss the Noble Library and what kind of ideas we have for it. The Sandburg Library is kind of a way station for homeless people at this point. I know this for a fact. I've interviewed a homeless man who lives in the Sears building who uses the Sandburg Library to stay warm in the winter. I don't see very much going on in the Sandburg Library. I rarely see cars there. I understand the sentimental, nostalgic value of that
Jay,
building.
I've actually driven through there a few times. Sorry to interrupt you. In the last few weeks at different times of the day, and yeah, the parking lot's basically empty every time I've gone through.
So you have a library.
Yes, it's on the days that it's open.
I did a piece about a year ago. He's long gone now. I do wonder. I sometimes think about him. Wonder whatever happened to him. There was a homeless man living in Sears a year ago, and he was a 65-year-old guy, and his body was breaking down, and 100 issues with that, and the fact that a 65-year-old guy is living in a building and then having to walk around an area by a Walmart. You can imagine at nighttime the dangers of that. So I go, where are you staying warm? Where are you spending your days? And this 65-year-old guy who has been homeless for the last 40 years was incredibly articulate, incredibly intelligent. He was talking to me about things I couldn't even believe. I go, how the hell do you guys know all I said, how the hell do you know all this? He goes, I spend my time in libraries, staying warm, and all you can do is read all day. So on one hand, I was stunned to hear this. On the other hand, I was like, wow, you're self-educated. You were autodidactic almost. Like, it was just amazing to hear. It was actually tragic to see a man this brilliant who's a homeless guy living in a van and hiding out in a Sears. And but that is what the Sandburg Library had become, a way station for someone to stay warm. I think, very quickly, I think about that guy. His story was interesting, not to get off track here.
You never do.
He was attempting to get himself together so he could, you guys have seen the movie Nomad about 10 years ago that came out? Nobody saw it. It won Best Picture or something. It was about homeless people. It was about homeless people who live in cars, and it was based off the true story of a group out in New Mexico. And this guy had a connection to one of these groups, and he was trying to get out there, but he didn't have the means yet, and that was his ultimate goal. Because if you're homeless and you're 65 years old, Michigan weather can be deleterious for you. So I wonder whatever happened to that guy. He's long gone. But I do know this: Sears is right next door to Sandburg, and there's homeless people in there right now. How do I know that? I was just over there, and we did a story on it, and you can tell looking in there. You can tell there's people going in and out of there and using it as a way station. Maybe this is a time to talk about Sears, or do you want to go back to Noble?
I don't know. What do you want to talk about with Sears?
Geez.
I mean, Sears, our hands are tied with it. Right?
The Sears' hands.
Let me say this. I'm going to trust a lot of faces in the room. You guys are pretty engaged people. You know what I'm about to say. You understand this. But the city doesn't go and develop properties. Private developers, private property owners do that. So when people say you should go put this here, put this there, which if I heard that once when I was on council, I heard it 1,000 times. We don't have that kind of, here's that word, power, okay? We don't have that kind of power, nor should we, all right? So when you have a private property owner at Sears that, for reasons that I do not understand, is basically a real estate collector and wants to hold it for who knows what.
Contrarian investor is what he is.
The city, I can tell you, just from my time on council, the city's worked very hard. I don't want to put him on the spot, and I'm not going to go into details, but we got Dan West, president of the Chamber of Commerce, in the room, and I remember years ago, I know Dan West was, I remember a time, Dan, if I remember correctly, you flew to Chicago to meet, or maybe it wasn't you, but okay, but the point, the point is, there's Chamber of Commerce, the city, have worked with that property developer for years, and all you can do is continue to send inspectors over there and make sure they're keeping the grass cut, and which they generally do. And we don't like looking at a building; it's embarrassing. But that's kind of the situation with Sears. I don't think we're having a nostalgia versus. I don't think. Although I can stir the pot here a little bit if you want.
Let's do it. Stir it up.
I don't think we're going to have a nostalgia.
Let's get
I don't think we're going to have a
up.
nostalgia issue with Sears. I think everybody would agree that we want to see something happen with Sears. But when it comes time to redevelop Sears, you guys know, for a lot of people, with all the attention it got this summer, there's a lot of people in this city that I think Vision 21 was all about 5 in Farmington. Vision 21 is not just about 5 in Farmington. There's 3 focus areas in Vision 21, and one of them is 7 in Middlebelt. Okay? And guess what? It's for a mixed use, I don't like this word, but what some people would call a downtown type environment. Okay? That's what Vision 21 says. Now, I actually think there's some merits to some components of that. Okay? But just to show you, like, what a lot of people don't know here either is, I have this thing I've said, Kathleen, you've heard me say this so many times, sorry, but I spent 12 years on planning commission on city council, and I've decided one of the natural laws of the universe is that there's never a development that the neighbors like.
Never, ever.
Ever.
Would you agree, though, not to interrupt you, would you agree the current moment is a little bit more tense? I know it's been like that forever, but
yeah,
would you?
I don't know. I'm not sure. On some things it is. But I don't need to go down that tangent. The point is, in all my years on planning commission and city council, I have no idea how many development projects I saw, but I'm going to guess. It's very safe to say I dealt with 500 different development projects, site plan approvals, whatever, probably more. I don't know. In all those years, there was one project that broke that rule. And city council denied it. I voted to approve, by the way. But city council denied it. The neighbors actually wanted the development. You know what it was? It was that Livonia Pavilion building, that tall building to the east of Sears across Middlebelt, which if you've ever driven back there, you will see blight in Livonia.
Oh, yeah.
Don't bother driving back there, but it's bad. The neighbors were desperate for that to be redeveloped. There was a developer who wanted to come do $10 million investment in that property, including putting homes along the street behind it to complete that neighborhood. And city council voted it down, and some of the members in council, I'm going to leave them nameless, you know what their reason was? The reason was they wanted to preserve the vision of Vision 21. And some of those city council members were arguing very ardently against Vision 21 just this past summer. So I just want you guys to understand so Sears, we all agree Sears needs to be developed, but that thing comes, and we're going to deal with the same thing. Same thing with Laurel Park. I mean, I don't know what the plans are for Laurel Park, but we can all see what's going on there. It can only be, it's only a matter of time before that's redeveloped, at least I hope so. I can tell you when I was on council, there were developers very much expressing interest in it.
I think
can you imagine what that fight's going to be?
I think it's safe to say that Laurel Park's going to be gone sooner rather than later. I think it's quite evident. So then the battle will be, what do we do with that? Or what do we allow there?
And I can tell you, I don't know this. This is pure conjecture. I want to make this abundantly clear. I have no inside knowledge of what discussions have happened. We have some city council people in the room. Maybe they know more than I do. I know nothing about what I'm about to say. I just want to make that clear, all right? Those of you that don't like me, you can take that clip and use it, all right? Now I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, I'll tell you, I can almost guarantee you that whatever development comes there is going to involve mixed-use housing. Why? Because here's another one of the struggles that we deal with. And I want you guys to think about this. Put your city planning hats on for a second. Look at how the economy has changed. We don't need nearly as much retail space as we used to need. That's why all these stores are closing. We're all buying stuff online. Or if we're not buying online, it's big box stores. And by the way, those aren't forced on us. Those are there because that's what we prefer as shoppers. That's where the market has gone. Okay? That's number one. Office. What's happened to the need for office space? It's coming back. But is it going to come back to what it was? I highly doubt it. Is Victor Parkway ever going to be full again the way it was? I think that's very questionable. What does that lead you with? The thing that we say we have a shortage of, which is housing. You understand why all these little pockets of places are looking for housing? And yes, that's where the market's going, but the people that say, no, but that's not what it was supposed to be, we might have to rethink that unless you want to look at a bunch of vacant lots. I mean, these are just some of the things that we have to talk about.
That's the concern, because I'm growing weary of people worshiping empty buildings. And that's a direct quote from somebody in this room who I think highly of. We have a problem with too many people worshiping empty buildings in this city. It's absurd, the notion of it. Look, the Sheets site at 8 in Newburgh, there were literally people there protesting a new bidding, literally guarding an empty Rite Aid, which is a problem for people to police. I don't care what goes in there. I want something in there. It's a blighted parking lot. It looks like it's embarrassing to look at. And we've got empty buildings all over the city. And anytime there's a new idea, you get the not in my backyard motif comes alive for every single thing.
And you know, Jay, I think you maybe just hit on something there too. I talked about the nostalgia versus pragmatic change, but and I try to understand the other side saying, I think the nostalgia comes from a love for the city, and I think that's sincere. But let's flip it around.
Good intention.
Let's flip it around the other way. There's fear involved on both sides. Okay? Yeah, one side that's afraid that things are going to be different than what they were. But you just heard in Jay, there's another side that's very sincerely afraid that things are going to go downhill and we're going to have a blighted city. So there's competing fears there too. It's just another way of looking at that same battle. So battle for the soul of Livonia, I think with the stuff we see playing out in City Council, I think it comes down to a lot of that.
I think I would argue that the city needs to renew itself. By the way, renewal is not the worst motif in the world. It's not an evil, vile thing. It needs to happen in Livonia. Livonia, I took somebody for a tour of Livonia today, driving around, and I'm like, it feels kind of like the 80s in here. That's kind of my long gripe. Anyone who follows me on social media knows I'm consistently grinding my teeth over the notion that Livonia looks like it's stuck in
I thought you liked the 80s.
I do, but I don't want to live in it. You know, I want to watch about the 80s on Netflix. I don't want to live in 1982. I don't think anyone does. And more importantly, the younger generation is coming up. Do you think they want to live in the 80s?
No.
Not at all.
I grew up in the 80s, and I'm not even a big fan of the 80s. But here's another just real quick one, a very practical thing that we see play out from my time at council. There was, I remember when the neighborhood where the Clay School used to be was developed, over there near 6 Mile Newburgh, and the original proposal had attached condos on the eastern end of that property. Single-family homes throughout, but then a section of attached condos. And the neighbors went nuts. And I was looking at that and I'm like, okay, we all know we know what the demographics of the city are. We do, by the way, just quick aside, we do have young families moving into the city. I live on a street, when we moved in there, since the time I moved in there 12 years ago, we've had 9 houses sell, every one of them to young families. Families are coming here for the same reason they've always come here. It's a safe place to live, we've got great services, and we've got low taxes. Okay? That's why they're coming here. And as long as we can maintain those things, we're not gonna have a problem with attracting young families. That's what young families have always wanted. All right? But we are getting older. We have and so when you look at that, and I know somebody in this audience who has lived in Livonia my entire life, who I've watched in the last 10 years go from the house to a smaller house to a condo, all in the same area, because she and her husband love Livonia and love where they live, but their needs have changed. There's a lot of people like that, and you know how many people, I don't have to tell you, you've all heard it too. How many people in that age group have said, I want to stay in Livonia, but I can't because I don't have anywhere to go. And so I have to move out. And I looked at that Clay development, and I was like, this is brilliant. You give people like that a chance to downsize, but stay in the neighborhood? And frankly, as a dad with young kids, I'm like, I like the idea of the grandmother down the street who wants to dote on my kids. I thought it was a great idea. But it was change. We've always been single-family homes. This has always been R2. We can't change it.
That's one of the issues with Livonia.
Yeah,
We've always done it a certain way.
Right.
Why change?
And so we have a bunch of people leaving the city because they can't stay.
And that's why we have South Lyon called Livonia West.
Yeah, we have a few people here that live.
Did you guys know about that? That's what Generation X calls South Lyon, Livonia West. I can't tell you how many people I graduated with or went to high school with in the 90s. Who are in South Lyon. Literally half my friend group is in South Lyon.
And my friends that live there, they say all their neighbors are from Livonia too. They find their classmates when they move there.
The joke is that they should rename South Lyon Livonia West. And like it's.
Does South Lyon have soul?
I have no idea. I don't hang out in there too much. But that's a problem unto itself. Why are people leaving and moving further west? And there could be 100 different ways to think about that and talk about that.
Well, and Jay, I'm just watching the time. We're going to have to start pulling this in. But I'm just going to segue. It's 10:10. So I'm going to segue off that, though.
I'm losing my eyesight. I can't see that clock.
You said there's a reason people are leaving. Some of those reasons we can't help, okay? One of the big reasons that young people want to go other places is just the housing stock. They built houses differently in the 50s, 60s, and 70s than they do today. We have a lot of houses here that don't have master bathrooms. We have a lot of houses here that don't have a bedroom on the first floor. That's a hard thing to change. Okay, so there's not a whole lot of point in bemoaning that. But go ahead.
One thing though that is a major draw, there's somebody in this room who's a real estate expert and a dear friend of mine, and I've been talking to him for a long time about this. And he is talking to young homeowners coming into the city, and he's told me multiple times, young families come in with kids coming up, and one of the first things they always ask about is what kind of youth sports programs are going on in the area. That is a huge draw in the area, more so than almost anything else. You know, the fact that we have the Livonia Junior Football League, the LJAL,
The Michigan Wolves.
the Michigan Wolves. These are athletic programs in the city that are incredibly enticing. Not only that, you and I both have kids that are, our kids are athletes. We know what's going on moving west out of here. Brighton has turned into an athletic powerhouse because they're pulling residents up out of Livonia, all these areas, people looking to move west. Standing today, currently right now, Brighton High School, every single one of their athletic teams, or their programs, hockey, football, lacrosse, basketball, they're powerhouses. This is a public school beating Catholic schools. And all of that is because their youth athletic leagues in the city are drawing people in. We have that. That's a good draw for us. We need to do more, I think, though.
Well, I think that's exactly kind of where I was going. You took the athletics specifically, but we can't fix the housing stock thing. But what has Livonia always had? I talked about at the beginning that we can nurture and we can tap into, and that's that sense of connection and community spirit. Okay, sports do that. They connect people. The schools certainly do that. The different clubs do that. I guess council meetings do that sometimes. Just kidding. But that's been a passion of mine for a long time. Going back, a lot of you won't know about this. There's some people in the room that do. But back in the mid-2000s, I was part of a group that formed this group called the Livonia Community Marketing Consortium. And our whole thing was to try to tap into the spirit of Livonia. And it's probably a Pollyannish view, I'll admit. I'm a pretty idealistic guy, so it's not always realistic. But I do believe that the more we can continue to nurture those people connections that we've always had, that's the spirit of Livonia. That's the reason I don't want to leave. I see the ritzier houses other places, but I like that hometown feel of being where I'm from and with people that I know, and yeah, you know, even in a city of 95,000 people or whatever we're at now, I can't go to Costco without seeing somebody I don't know. I mean, so that sense of connection, nurturing that, I think is important. That's why I think, and I'm kind of, this is where we can go where you want with this, Jay, but I'm kind of pulling this in here. That's why I think it's so tragic that we've lost our local newspaper. I think that's a huge, huge pain point for this city, that we no longer have that twice weekly paper coming to connect us to one another. That's a huge loss. It's part of the reason I'm so thrilled that Michigan Enjoyer statewide, but that they've got a guy here that's so focused on Livonia and is bringing street-level journalism back to Livonia. You might not always like what he writes, but the guy does his research, okay? And
I try to.
And frankly, that's why I started the newsletter that I do. When I ran for council first time, I said, maybe it's hokey, but I said it's the 3 E's. I want to engage the citizenry, I want efficient government, and I want economic development. But engage the citizenry was first, because for a long time I've been saying it's these people connections. That's what's going to keep this people strong. When cities go downhill, it's because more people want to move out than want to come in. If we can keep this a place that people want to stay here, you're not going to have to worry about your property values. You're not going to have to worry about what kind of business gets built on the corner. Okay? Those standards are going to be upheld. And so in the same way you guys at the Michigan Enjoyer and with you are trying to bring that community journalism back, part of the reason I started that newsletter was to keep you informed on what's going on in council when I was there, because I want people engaged. And then when I was coming off council, people said, please don't stop because it's the only way we know what's going on. So I didn't stop. But I'll tell you, on that news, you guys all know I'm conservative. If you read that, you know my views come through. I try to be fair, but I've got my biases. I've got plenty of people that read that newsletter that disagree with me ardently. And yet they tell me, but I appreciate you keeping us informed what's going on, and I appreciate you explaining the rationale behind what you're saying. That's all I ask for. You don't have to agree with me. I just want to have a conversation. That's what we're here for tonight.
The good thing about Livonia too, we're coming up on the end here. We got 5 minutes to go, I think.
Yeah.
Livonia is a good community, and no matter what the current condition is. You mentioned the tight sense of community. People often call Livonia a big, small town. But the soul of Livonia, to the extent that a soul exists in this city, all of us might have different views of what that means or different interpretations. I tend to lean into the 80-20 type perspective. If you've got 100% of the people, 20 of them are really working hard to keep a community or a group of people, keep the wheels on the road and everything working. And Livonia is a very special city. You and I both know this. Livonia is special because we have people in this city, civically active, volunteering their time, and doing extraordinary work in the city. I see Mike Testa back in the corner there. I told you I was going to name you, bud. Mike Testa in the back corner over there is one of these key people. They're like a remnant within the city volunteering their time, doing good work. And Livonia has always had that. Going back to the 80s, we've had key people in the city doing really great civil work, it was civic work, I mean, and just that's one of the cool things about how Livonia has operated all these years. And it makes it feel like home. It makes it feel like, hey, if you don't know what's going on, you can call somebody you know and find out what's going on. And the fact that we're getting going and you and I are paying such close attention and writing about the stuff we were writing about and keeping an eye on things and being interested and keeping people curious about what's happening, I think is part of that sort of vibe that, you know, we have to connect people in this city. We have to get people talking to each other, not on social media. Social media is a disaster.
There's a reason I do an email.
Yeah.
I used to do this on social media, and you just get the trolls. On email, even the people that disagree with me give me thoughtful responses. It's on purpose that I do an email. I could blow up my subscription list if I advertise it on Facebook. I won't, because it's just not quality conversation. But you know, Jay, I just got two more quick points, and then I'm probably done. And I don't know if we want to take a couple questions or whatever. But two more really quick points. Number one, what's new today is tomorrow's nostalgia. Just think about that. What's new today is tomorrow's nostalgia. I grew up going to the YMCA. I've got really special memories of the YMCA. My kids have really special memories of going to the rec center with Dad. My sister has really special memories of after Friday night football games going to the Taco Bell that used to be at Southern Mount Farmington where all the high school kids hung out.
The Big Burger now?
My family has really special memories of going to Big Burg after soccer games. What's new today is tomorrow's nostalgia. So just remember that when we're having these conversations, okay? We're in a larger arc of history here, a larger narrative than just ourselves. That's number one. The second thing I was just gonna say is, you talk about that 80-20 and the 20 that are really doing work. This room is the 20. You guys wouldn't be here if you weren't part of that 20. And this room includes people that I know like what we're saying, and I know some people in this room, because I know who they are, don't like what we're saying. But all of you are part of the 20. And so I just want to thank you for being here and being engaged, and just encourage you to continue to nurture those connections. Talk to your neighbors, get involved. Yeah, go to city council meetings. Give them a hard time. You sure gave us a hard time earlier. So. Although when you go give them a hard time, it makes my newsletters a lot longer to write. So
this is,
anyway.
In fact, if there was discussion on social media. There's been discussion on Charlie's show. Is there soul in Livonia? To the extent that there is, what is it, in fact? And I think we're seeing evidence of that in this room. I'm looking around, I'm seeing some of the faces of people in this room. I have to admit, too, one of the anxieties that Scott and I were,
Is that our alert?
Sorry about that. Let me finish my point. One of the anxieties Scott and I had putting this event together was, would anybody come up, would anyone actually show up? And I'm looking around the room and I'm seeing a lot of faces of people I know, a lot of parents, Stevenson parents, Franklin parents, Churchill parents, and I'm seeing people that I know that are very active and concerned and have just smarter people than me, obviously. Everyone knows me, but, you know. Just very, very interesting people that care about the city. And that is, in fact, the soul of this city, I think. I think that matters. The fact that people get up off the couch and would come and listen to us. I mean, look, we're just a couple of guys here. People came here to talk to us. I mean, that anxiety we had, crazy. We were concerned, would anyone care about two guys talking about the city of Livonia? We looked out the curtain and we were excited to see people that actually were interested to come and hear you and I talk about how much we love Livonia and the soul of Livonia. So I'm
kind of disappointed more people didn't come to heckle you.
I know, but the answer to the question, is there soul in Livonia? I think you and I are looking at the answer to that question right now.
I think so too, and it might be a different soul than Detroit. It might be a different soul than Royal Oak. It might be a different soul than Northville. But you know what? I've been saying this back to the marketing consortium days. We're not going to out Detroit. We're not going to out Royal Oak. We're not going to out Ann Arbor. We're not going to out Northville. We just need to know who we are. And who are we? I'll tell you who I think we are. We're just a really great practical place to raise a family. And there's a lot of people that want that. That's our brand. Some people aren't going to like that. They're going to want something with a greater nightlife. They're going to want something with a more exciting sense of place. There's aspects of that I would like too, and we can continue to debate those things. But let's not be ashamed about who we are. This is a great place to live. There's a reason we all live here, and that's our brand. So
that's why we're here, man.
Yeah, and that's probably not a bad place to stop.
Yeah.
Should we do questions? Should we do 2 questions?
What's that?
Should we do 2 questions?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, why not?
We don't want this to go long, and I think we'll both stick around. People want to chat. I'd love the conversation. But we talked about doing Q&A. Why don't we do 2 questions if anybody wants to?
Anyone have any questions? Anyone have, or critical comments? We'll take anything.
We'll do that too.
Or who's here that?
For mayor.
What's? Scott, are you going to run for mayor?
Dude, if I'd have known they were going to ask that, I wouldn't have done this. No, you know what? I'm going to give you a very honest answer. And every time I say this, people say it sounds like a political answer. It's not. I have no plans to run for mayor. Okay, but I'll never rule anything out, just as a rule. But I know that sounds like a political answer. But I'll just tell you that whether it's mayor or council, whatever, I'll never say never. I enjoyed my work on city council. I love this city. I love doing stuff like this. This feels great tonight. This is a lot of fun. But with where my family and just career are right now, it doesn't make sense for me right now. And frankly, I think I have more influence with this newsletter than I had when I was on council. So I think I'm going to keep doing that, and we'll see what happens. Listen, at 39 years old, I started my 4th career. Okay, I've learned not to say never to anything or to assume something is going to last forever. So very honestly, there's no grand plan for me to run for mayor, but I like being involved.
You know,
so,
by the way,
sorry to disappoint some of you, but
in the conversations
we need
I
good
have,
people to run for mayor.
In the conversations I have with Scott over this past year, I've asked him a few times, "Are you going to run for mayor?" And he gives that answer, but I keep asking, and I'll probably keep asking you as the years go on. When are you going to run for mayor? So, and that is a big question. I think a lot of people ask it. A lot of people call me and ask it. And I know you're ready to.
I got 3 kids in college.
You're ready to
and
kick
one in
my
high
head
school,
off right now.
I think I'll run for mayor. So, anyway, all right. So he just wasted 1 question. Does somebody have one more? Yeah, Chris.
Well, I can have a question.
Yell it out so I can hear it.
I don't have a question. I have a comment. If 1/4 of you show up at the next council meeting and let council know how bad the cement work is outside.
I can applaud that.
Next spring. It's very simple, very easy. But that needs to be done. They wasted your tax dollar right out front.
He's not wrong. It's a problem. All right, that was quick enough. We'll do one more, but this is the last one. Does anybody have one more? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Deb Christensen, and I'm on the Save Alfred Noble board, the nonprofit. I would welcome a conversation with either or both of you.
Why don't you ask the question or make a comment right now?
The comment is I'm just curious, you think that we're trying to save the library because of nostalgia? Is that your assumption?
That's a pretty strong assumption on my part, yeah.
Then you're misinformed.
Would you care to tell us what you think then?
Okay, well, what you're misinformed about is, number one, in case any of you don't know, is that there was a millage, and by the way, I'm 60, I've lived in Livonia all but 3 years out of my life, okay, so long time. We had a millage for the libraries when this library was built. I don't know if anybody remembers that, to take care of the other 2 libraries. What did the city do with that money? They didn't give it to those 2 libraries, which is why you see the decay in the other libraries.
What would you suggest we do with the Noble Library now?
I think that we need to repurpose it and try to bring in somebody to help us do that.
What's your idea for it?
It doesn't matter what my personal...
No, I'm asking you though. It matters to me, I'm asking.
What's important to me is that we get community input for the idea.
What's your specific idea?
My specific idea? I would rather have community input. And there is a survey right now, by the way, everybody, for that purpose, to give community input. There's a task force right now.
Ma'am, I'm asking you a question. I know, Deb, what's your personal, what do you think?
I personally would like to see it back to be a library, or a partial library.
Okay.
It is not that. It's some kind of a community center for the South Side.
Community center that does what though?
We have a lot of organizations that are looking for space to use, to rent. Did you guys have to pay for
Can
this
you,
space right here?
can you name the organizations? Tell us what they are.
You mean nonprofits in Livonia?
Yeah, name them.
We've got Friends of Livonia Arts, we've got the Livonia.
Have they asked to use it?
They've got the Livonia Youth.
Are they in play to use it? Are they in play to use it? Have they come and said, we'll use it?
It's an umbrella group of all the wonderful cultural nonprofits in the city.
Could I just, I feel like you're a little bit argumentative right now with me.
I'm asking you questions.
Hey, Deb, let's just,
Aren't I-
Deb,
asking you questions?
I'm asking you questions.
Deb, can we just for a second, in all seriousness, can you let everybody know where they can find that survey? Because I filled it out the other day, but I want to make sure everybody knows. Is there a place that they can?
It's on Save Alfred Noble. It's on the mayor's website. It's on the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a good. I mean, you talk about Battle Soul Livonia. Like there's a legitimate conversation to be had here. Okay, and there's probably only so far we can take it in this forum. But thanks for making the comments, Deb. Seriously.
I actually have one other thing to say. Why do we covet Greenmead? Why do we covet Greenmead and we don't covet Noble? Noble was built in the 50s. It's a mid-century modern building. And do you know the history about Noble? Or how
I did
it's
an article on it, ma'am.
Oh, you can call me Deb.
So you guys have heard where you can find the survey. You've heard some of the comments here. Yeah. So mayor's website, you said, and on All Things Livonia, was there a third place you said?
Livonia Community webpage or Facebook page.
Okay.
Yes.
What's that? I mean, should we just
Any
we
other-
can stick around? But
Anyone
Keep
else?
going.
Who's got questions? Who's
you
got
guys can
questions?
leave if you want. But Ken.
Can you talk about replacement of municipal buildings?
About what?
The cost of upkeeping the municipal buildings that we have, like City Hall and the police department and others.
I mean, you guys heard all the debate.
That was the argument.
Yeah, you heard all the debate last time. I can tell you. Yeah, and by the way, we're kind of in bonus time now. So if people need to leave, you're not offending us. Thank you for coming. But the numbers that I heard when we were on council, they maybe changed a little bit, but it was for the buildings in question, it was going to be $97 million over 10 years to keep those buildings at their current state. That's what was told. There's questions related to that too. But so yeah, it just comes down, and this is where the debate is at what point do you pour money into existing buildings versus rebuild? And that's exactly what the debate is. We're not going to solve that here tonight. But yeah, Ginny. And I think we should wrap it up after this because I want to get people up. Yeah, Ginny.
What about House of Denmark? Is that still?
Oh, gee. I think that's probably in the Sears. I think that's in the Sears category.
I just drove over. I drove over to House of Denmark today. I drove past it. What would you do with that building?
I don't know.
You should have
So
taken a baseball bat to that building.
let's wrap this up. Hey, everybody, thanks for
Thank
coming
you so
tonight.
much.
We'll stick around. Appreciate your time. Hopefully you found value in this.